operational teams are primarily focused on delivering and maintaining services to our clients. And day to day, without thinking too much about it, we do a number of things to make all of this happen. We just do it, we just get it done. Much of our work is expressed in tickets and it's tracked through Team Dynamics. But let's spend a quick minute to break down the work we do in more precise ITSM terms, because when using a tool like Team Dynamics, the nature of the work we do matters. First, when things don't go well for our clients, something's broken, they are usually reported through different help points and we go and fix them. For example, I can't connect to Wi-Fi. These come into operational teams as an incident ticket. Another thing we do is we provide services on request, much like ordering off a menu, like, for example, activating a network port. This comes in as a service request ticket. We also perform routine maintenance where a production service or an asset is modified in some way. For example, upgrading a network switch. We can express this work done through change tickets. More advanced is in our day-to-day operations, we observe issues in our environment that, if they're not solved, they might result in new incidents coming into the team. Or maybe there already are several incidents that have been reported and it's the symptom of something bigger. We call these problems, and they are also tracked through problem tickets. An example of this might be network bandwidth that's congested during the day, and it might come in as an incident ticket saying my internet is slow. Now, just by classifying our tickets, we can gain insight into how we are spending our time and effort. So all of the work I just described fits really nicely into the concept of a ticket, and that is there's a record of something that needs to occur. Someone in the queue takes that ticket, does the work, closes the ticket, resolves the problem or the service or the change, and we go on to the next one. So Team Dynamics has the concept of a ticketing application. Operational teams are also part of projects, either as part of someone else's project or as part of our own. And projects don't fit well in the context of tickets. It's very difficult to track a project through a single ticket that really is intended for incidents and service requests and change, etc. Because each project has a plan and often involves more than one resource, the concept of project tasks is used to track projects and to work on projects. And to do this, Team Dynamics has a different module, which is called the Project and Portfolio Management module. So it's not a ticket. And working on projects is a little different, but this is a good thing. So operational teams are involved in projects. And normally, when we think of projects, we think of what I call big P projects. And those are projects that are either coming from the project office or are being tracked by the project office and often have a project manager or a business analyst assigned to the project to work with the customers and organize the teams because there's more money and more time involved. Some of the project artifacts that get done before the project is started are evaluating the risks and the rewards and the reasons for doing the project. And that ends up having a detailed plan, and often projects are split up into different milestones to manage the complexity. But in operational teams, we also do what I call small p projects. And small p projects don't get the same oversight from the project management office, and normally we're left to self-manage our own because there's a lot less money involved, and the project exists to optimize an existing service, either the delivery of it or to add a new piece of equipment or to make something more complex as part of delivering a service. But there are things in common, and we need to really think about what we do from a project management mentality, even if we're using small p projects. And that is, a project has a start and an end date. It's not something that continues on forever. There are people who are working on a project, time and effort, and those are resources. There's also a scope of the project, which really simply means what it is that we're actually trying to do. And at the end of it all, we're working through a plan. We're not just doing things because we think it's the right thing to do. We're doing a little bit of planning ahead of time so that the teams and the resources who are involved are accomplishing strategically what we need to have done. The project management tool in Team Dynamics looks very complicated because it's really been designed for the big P projects. And as such, if you look at some of the things that are there by default, there's a lot of components and project sections that can really make managing and working on a project in an operational context actually quite difficult, mostly because it's a giant wall of information that's presented to you. For example, there's components like announcements and briefcases, calendars to track your stuff, contacts, issue trackers, risks registers, plans, and user stories as part of Agile. Sections have goals and systems affected, related processes, organizational risks, benefits, expenses, returns, role forecasts, resources, scorecards, stakeholders, and milestones. That's a lot. But do we need all that for an operational project? I don't think so. In fact, that actually makes it worse. So let's cut down the stuff that we don't need and leave us with the things that we do need. So perhaps a good minimal set of tools that we can actually use in an operational context are things like announcements, which is a feature in Team Dynamics that you can use when you need to announce something to the project team. Maybe something's occurred or something is ready to be done. Issues is where you might track things that come up in the course of working on a project that are preventing you from proceeding, or a question that's come up that you think needs to be dealt with and addressed by the entire team rather than in isolation. And plans, which is where all of the magic of a project is perhaps like a card wall where the tasks have been identified, where people have been assigned pieces of work, and everyone can see visually what state the project is in. And because people are the ones who are working on a project, the resources section is where you identify who exactly is working on the project and in what role. So by cutting out all of the components and project sections you don't actually need in a very small P context, you actually make the management of the project so much easier, and as a resource who's working on a project, a lot easier as well. So thinking about the work an operational team does in terms of projects, and by going through the setup process to get a project created in Team Dynamics, it's really all an exercise in getting to the true magic of what we're trying to accomplish, and that is a card wall, or also known as a Kanban board. And what a card wall represents is a visual tracker of all of the tasks that are required to be done as part of this project. It gives you an idea of who's working on what and what status of each task is and what's left to come. And the more complex the project you have, the more critical it is to identify who's working on what and what's coming next. And also, when you're discussing the status of the project as a team, you've now got a visual reference to see where the project is at. And it's not a matter of checking your memory or talking to that guy next to you to see what's going on. We can all see in plain English in front of us what the project is actually at. Working through a card wall is one of the main features of working in what's called an agile way. In Agile, you've got a backlog of items that are on the list. So these are things that we're going to be doing as part of this project. And people are able to assign it or be assigned to it, and they can move those tasks to the in process column and hopefully, eventually, the completed column. And sometimes when we can't go forward, we have to move things to the on hold column. But at least we know what's been accomplished and what's left to be accomplished. And this is really powerful. And not only is it easy to look at, but it's so much better than trying to work through a ticket in which all of this work would normally be represented as just a comment on the feed. And that means anyone looking at that ticket has to figure out in their own mental picture what the status of the project is. This is a much better way. One of the built in mindsets that most operational teams have is that because we're working with the technology so closely, we see very clearly and quickly what's wrong and what needs to be improved. And we often want to go and start doing that as quickly as we can. But one of the ways of looking at projects and project management mentality is that it gives us a slight second to pause and think, hold on a second, let's really think about this. So before starting a project, first we have to recognize that what we want to do is or is not a project. And before starting, let's do a little bit of pre-planning before we even put one thing into action. So number one, let's define what we're actually trying to do, or call that the project scope. Sometimes scope creep is going to happen no matter what, but often we start doing things before we have a full understanding of what exactly done looks like. And how can you be done a project if you don't actually know what you're trying to accomplish in black or white? Number two, we need to estimate who are the people that are going to be involved and what is their role. Most projects should have a sponsor, which is someone who's identified as knowing everything about the project. There needs to be a manager who is going through the team dynamics button clicking to set everything up. And we need to know who's working on the project, which are the people who are actually accomplishing the things on the card wall. And often in an operational context, these are all the same people, but maybe not. And let's do that before we start the project. Number three, we need to estimate the resources, and specifically, how long is it going to take and how much effort is required. As an operational team, we're primarily concerned with keeping the services running and being delivered effectively, and the time left over really is what we're using to work on projects. And if that's true, let's give ourselves an honest assessment of how long it's going to take. Number four, let's really understand the cost benefit of what we're doing as part of the project. Maybe call that the priority. We can spend a lot of effort and a lot of time to accomplish something that might have minimal impact on our service. And it's not that it shouldn't be done or we shouldn't look at it, but maybe in the context of everything that we're doing, it might not have the priority of something else. So at least maybe we think about that before we start the project. Number five is we want to determine how this project will be managed. Because any project that goes into a tool, if no one looks at it and no one works on it, the tool is not going to help. So what we'd like to do before the project even starts is figure out, how are we going to kick off the project? Are we going to report on it weekly? Is this going to be part of a large collection of projects that we're looking at the same time? Are we going to have scrum meetings for this project or all projects at the same time? But really what we're trying to figure out is what is our team's project management approach. So now would be a good time to mention that despite the tools that are available in Team Dynamics and looking at projects and the planning that's involved, let's not overcomplicate this, because the reality is that we're already working on projects without a tool and without a project management approach, and things are probably getting done. So we don't really need to overcomplicate it too much. We're just going to put a little bit of structure around what we're already doing. So for those working on a project in an operational team or creating a project on an operational team, let's consider the following things. Number one is we need to be mindful of the project priority. A project happens in addition to the work that's happening operationally, so incidents and service requests and changes, etc. Therefore, the ability to work on project tasks is sometimes heavily influenced by the amount of work coming in operationally. Number two, the project plan needs to be accurate. If you're working in a card wall, you've got tasks that are on the board, and it's essential for the people working on the project that they're not working on tasks that aren't on that board, and the work that they've done on those tasks is reflected on the card wall. After all, what we're trying to achieve is a visual representation of what the project status is. So just like working in a ticket where the resolution is entered as a comment, working on tasks is very much the same thing, but all the team resources need to be able to do that. Number three is to be mindful of the resources. So resources on a project are often part of multiple teams or different teams. The time and effort each resource is able to give to a project may or may not be possible depending on the operations that they're a part of. Finally, it bears repeating, but don't overcomplicate this. So next up in this video series are a few more videos to get into detail with some of the things that you need to know to run projects through Team Dynamics. The first video coming up will be about creating projects, and this is for project managers or sponsors, how to set up a new project in Team Dynamics as quickly as possible. Next, we'll be looking at working on projects, and this is mostly for the resources on a project, the day-to-day work operational teams do to contribute to a project, so looking at card walls and issues. Next, we'll be looking at managing projects, and this is geared more towards project managers and sponsors. And this video focuses on the work required while a project is running, so doing status updates and managing card walls and looking at backlogs. And finally, the best part of a project, which is closing it out. So a transition to operations, as well as some reports that can identify how well projects went. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.